The Ground Proximity Warning System, GPWS, protects you by warning of a potentially dangerous flight path towards terrain. It operates from radio altitude, not slant range distance, between 50 and 2,450 feet above ground level. So you must react quickly to avoid controlled flight into terrain. When a warning is activated, you get an oral alert. For example,
terrain, 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 terrain.
Usually the two glare shield lights also come on. This is the soft warning. If the dangerous situation is not corrected, you get a harder warning, flashing glare shield lights, and a more urgent oral alert. In most situations, you cannot stop the warnings. You have to take corrective action. You can, however, cancel the below glide slope caution. The system can be tested on ground by pressing the GPWS test switch on the glare shield. Some oral warnings sound and lights come on. Consult your manual for details. Don't press for more than 3 seconds or you'll get a long maintenance test. If the test fails, the GPWS caution light on the caution panel comes on. Wait 30 seconds, then repeat to the other side. The caution light also comes on if there is a problem in flight. On the left side panel is the guarded flap override switch, which inhibits some warnings. The GPWS landing flap selector switch tells the GPWS the intended landing flap selection, 10, 15 or 35 degrees. You'll be pleased to hear that if the stall warning is active, GPWS is inhibited. Pulling up to correct a stall would not be a good move, especially if you're fighting against the stick pusher. The GPWS computer takes input from radio altimeters 1 and 2, from the flight data processing system, from air data computers 1 and 2, from the AHARS computers, from the VHF NAV receivers, from the FMS, and decision height from the index control panels. There are also glide slope signals from the flight guidance computers, flap and gear position signals from the PSEU and flap override switch, flap position set on the GPWS landing flap selector panel near the hydraulic control panel, and stall signals from the stall warning computers. Outputs are to a separate flight deck speaker and to the audio and radio management system for the oral warnings, to the GPWS caution light, and of course to the glare shield lights via an advisory control unit. Oral warnings depend on GPWS modes, which have a priority. If 2 come on at the same time, only the highest priority will be heard on the speakers or on the headphones. The GPWS computer decides which mode to trigger based on radio altitude, closure rate to terrain, descent rate, and airspeed. Let's look at the modes. Firstly, excessive descent rate. We'll explain it in terms of graphs which show what is known as the envelope for the warning. This one shows radio altitude against descent rate. If you're descending at 2,000 feet per minute and you're at 2,500 feet, then there's no warning. But at 4,000 feet per minute and at 1,750 feet, you get the sink rate oral alert. And the pull-up lights come on. If you don't correct the rate of descent, you go into the second envelope with a harder warning and a flashing light. When descending on an ILS, the sink rate and pull-up envelopes are changed to minimize nuisance warnings. When below the glide slope, the envelopes are triggered earlier at lower altitudes and at lower descent rates. When above the glide slope, the envelopes are triggered later at higher altitudes and at higher descent rates. Above 200 feet, the envelopes are also affected by the number of dots of glide slope deviation and using the GPWS flap override switch. The oral warning and light cannot be cancelled. You need to climb 300 feet to stop the warning. Mode 1 can sometimes be caused by a wind shear. Mode 2, excessive closure rate to terrain, has two submodes, 2A and 2B. 2A is with flaps up, and 2B is with flaps in a landing configuration or on an ILS approach. The graph shows closure rate against radio altitude. For 2A, when you enter the first part of the envelope, you get and the pull-up lights. If the terrain closure rate continues or increases, you get the hard warning. For higher speeds and closure rates, the envelopes are increased to give an earlier warning at higher altitudes. Now mode 2B, with flaps in a landing configuration or on an ILS. With gear down, the soft warning is and there are no pull-up lights. If you continue descending with gear up, you get the hard warning. The flap override switch will prevent hard warnings and will cancel hard and soft warnings, so you can maneuver near terrain when approaching an airport. Mode 3, descent after takeoff or go around, is armed when airspeed is increasing from 50 to 925 feet above ground level, when barometric altitude is increasing, and when the landing gear is retracted. An altitude loss of about 10% triggers the oral alert.
Don't think.
And the flashing glare shield pull-up lights come on and stay on until there is a positive rate of climb. With the GPWS flap override switch selected, the altitude loss can be about 20% before triggering the Mode 3 alert. Mode 3 could occur after loss of an engine. Notice that there's no soft zone. Notice also that you don't get a pull-up oral alert. This could cause you to overreact when stall margin may be small. Mode 4, insufficient terrain clearance, compares radio height against indicated airspeed, not closure rate. It gives good protection not only against navigation or ATC errors, but also against not setting gear and flaps. There are three submodes: 4A with gear up, 4B with gear down, and 4C during takeoff or go around. Firstly, mode 4A. If you penetrate the envelope below 148 knots indicated airspeed with gear up, you get
too low gear
and the flashing pull-up lights. If you penetrate above 148 knots, you get
too low terrain
and the flashing lights. The upper part of the envelope is bigger to give earlier warning for higher speeds. Now mode 4B with gear down but flaps not in landing configuration. If you penetrate below 148 knots in the wrong configuration, you get
too low flaps
with the flashing lights. But this warning can be inhibited by the flap override switch. The landing flap selector switch supplies the GPWS with intended flap position. Above 148 knots, you get
too low terrain
and the lights. Mode 4C is active above 100 feet after takeoff and above 200 feet after a go-around, with gear up and flaps not in a landing configuration. It warns you of descent after takeoff or go-around, or the terrain rising at a faster rate than your climb. The GPWS warns if your current altitude drops below 75% of your maximum radio altitude. In other words, if you descend by more than 25% after takeoff or go-around. You get
too low terrain
and the pull-up lights. There is an expansion area for higher speeds. Mode 5, descent below glide slope, is enabled between 50 and 925 feet on an ILS with gear down. When you descend more than about 2/3 of a dot below the glide slope beam, you get a low volume soft warning.
wide slope
And the amber below glide slope lights come on steady. If you enter the loud alerting area, you get a higher volume hard warning.
wide slope
And the lights flash. In both areas, the aural warnings get faster as glide slope deviation increases and radio altitude decreases. Unlike other modes, you can silence the aural alert by pressing the light. The light stays on as a reminder. However, pressing the GPWS flap override switch will cancel the aural warning and the light. There are two parts of Mode 6. As you descend through the decision height, you'll hear
minimum
unless you set the decision height to 0. The minimum's aural alert is reset 1,000 feet above ground level. The second part of Mode 6 is excessive bank angle, triggered at roll angles over 15 degrees near ground and over 50 degrees above 190 feet. Finally, the optional enhanced ground proximity warning system shown on the navigation display on the MFD screens. Touch the Weather Radar Terrain toggle button on the EFIS control panel. Weather radar is replaced by a terrain map relative to your radio altitude. TCAS symbols, FMS flight plans, and FMS map indications can be superimposed on the terrain. Terrain 2,000 feet above you is red. Between 1,000 feet to 2,000 feet above you, light yellow. From 250 feet below you to 500 feet above, darker yellow. Between 500 and 1,000 feet below, light green. And between 1,000 and 2,000 feet below, darker green. If you are not within 500 feet of terrain, that is, no red warning or yellow caution threat areas, then the highest terrain is shown as solid green. Terrain below the lowest band and within 400 feet of the runway elevation is not shown. You may get cyan sea level if supported by your display. Pushing the Weather Radar Terrain button for more than 1 second removes the weather radar and terrain displays. However, if there is a terrain alert, that is red or yellow terrain within range, then the terrain display shows automatically in a fixed 10-mile auto range, together with an aural alert.
Caution.